Hello friends, this is another collection of disturbing stories from 4chan and Reddit. Before you start watching, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Thank you. Hello 4CHAN, I'm a disbeliever that has his own ghost story that seemingly has absolutely no explanation, but it's so fucking mundane and boring it doesn't make me believe. For years, every time I've thought about it, I always want to find the real explanation because I don't want it to be real. Finally, I'm coming to you to debunk something I already don't think is real because I haven't been able to do so. Backstory: I grew up with my grandpa in a big-ass house that used to be a church until he bought and renovated it. The upstairs was for some reason infamous among all the kids and even some adults for either being creepy or outright haunted. Even all the way up to 16, I had some friends who refused to go up there alone because it scared the shit out of them. Most specifically, shit always happened around Slash in the toy room at the very end of the upstairs hall. It was basically just a playroom for any of the dozens of kids, grandkids, great-grandkids that came over. Misc, lead-up encounters. Multiple kids and adults have claimed to me and my grandpa to have heard voices or weird noises upstairs. Around 12 to 14 years old, a family friend said a spirit upstairs had warned them someone was going to get hurt. Later that day, my friend broke his arm jumping around in the toy room. At around 14 to 15 years old, I had 3 friends stay overnight in my room downstairs. In the morning, my grandpa absolutely lost his shit on us for destroying the toy room, telling us to clean up after ourselves, even though we were never in there. We went upstairs to clean it up, and it was like a fucking tornado went through the room. Every single possible item and object was thrown across the floor. There was also a pair of real police handcuffs I'd gotten from some family member who stole them. As a kid, I was playing around and cuffed one of my toys to the pool table. I had no key, so the cuffs remained stuck to the table for years. They were broken in half at the chain when we were cleaning up. This isn't a LARP. And I am not fucking schizophrenic. I have made a post about this before, but it's gotten even more terrifying. To make a long story short, I have this habit of obsessing over a very specific kind of woman that I've created in my head. And every time I do this, a woman exactly like that enters my life. Or my social media, sometimes down to the exact fucking name. Well, this is where it gets very creepy. I played The Sims a few months ago. I created myself and a woman. I made her the ideal woman. She had a very unique look, basically my perfect wife. I remember when I was making the sim I felt a strange connection, as if she would appear in the real world. Well, guess what? A few days ago I met this chick. She looks identical to the sim. I mean really identical. And I don't just change the hair and skin on the sim. I take time to change everything from eye spacing, cheekbones, everything. This chick is the spitting image. And she is obsessed with me. She literally came from nowhere and is obsessed with me. I'm not hallucinating it. I'm not LARPing, I'm not crazy. I have the ability to manifest actual fucking humans into this reality. Why? Am I Neo? Am I the nobody? Is this world a simulation? Are these women demons? I don't trust them. I don't trust anything anymore. I keep ignoring her messages because I'm scared. I usually never interact with these women and avoid them, but I've actually been talking to her. You people may think this is a joke or even a blessing, but it's not. It's terrifying. Am I even real? I lived in a very peaceful village that was very safe for kids, but it had some scary stories that were passed from one generation to another. And I won't write about those stories. I will tell you my story that I still can't explain if it was real or if it was just my imagination. My uncle had cowshed near his new house. That cowshed first was used as old house by our family around World War II. Then later they made new house next to that old house and turned it into cowshed. House was made of rocks and some materials that they could afford at that time, so it looked very old and creepy. One day my mother told me that we are going to visit uncle and his wife. Day was sunny and it was summer. We came to their yard and we had to pass near that cowshed. Under that cowshed was very dark basement under earth, and it had window that was just like square-shaped hole in the wall close to earth. You could feel cold air coming from it. As we passed by it, I looked into that hole into darkness, and suddenly unbelievable thing happened that is still carved into my memory. From that dark basement hole jumped some humanoid-like creature that was bald, pale, and it had blue veins on his face and sharp teeth and dark eyes with yellow pupils, almost like there is no life in those eyes. It stretched its hand to reach me by my leg. I could hear how it clenches with his teeth. My mother pulled me by my hand. Then I just started to scream and cry, and after that I can't remember anything. I know that we spent time at Uncle and his wife's house. That cowshed is destroyed shortly after that, and I never saw that creature again, but I still remember it clearly. It's in my memory. Imran 26, and when I was 15, I once asked my mother does she remember anything, and she said that it never happened. I work for a property management company in Michigan. About 10 years ago, we got a major contract with the city of Detroit, and my boss sent me down to run it. Was best salary of my life. Obviously, there are a lot of abandoned houses in Detroit. At the time, the city didn't even know how many. The estimate at the time was about 130,000. Part of my job was to assess the properties for demolition in specific areas the city was trying to revitalize. Their plan never worked, but we made a fortune on it. So, we would find a lot of bad shit in these houses. Piles of heroin needles, dead dogs, stolen shit, ammo, you name it. And yes, we would find dead bodies. In some cases, the cops didn't even care to look at anything, and a city worker would stuff some of the bones or rotting flesh in a trash bag, and who knows what they did with it. Usually it was bones, and they didn't care cause the remains were assumed to be druggies or gang killings, and most of them probably were. The creepy shit to me wasn't these cadavers, some of which were sitting in chairs or in a pile of ashes. Some of the houses we went to looked like someone had just got up in the middle of dinner and left years earlier. Plates with rotten, desiccated food sitting on the dinner table, clothes still hanging in the closet, remote control on the couch. I'm not sure how that happens, but many of these abandoned homes look like the inhabitants had vanished. Our only explanation for it was that they had been the victims of murders or drugs and nobody ever collected their belongings, so their homes were just frozen the way they had left them. Don't know how else to explain it. Anyway, the real creepy shit happened in fall when we were preparing to demo a whole block. Had a bulldozer there already. It was a pretty dangerous area, and every house had been burned by arsonists except for one. So here's a creepy short but not so boring story, but weird. So growing up in a low-income home, not poor broke, but just not as good as how other people had it. I grew up in a mobile home and still am. Me and my other two siblings shared the master bedroom since it was spacious enough for the three of us, while our parents occupied a smaller room. But as long as I could remember since I was a kid, we had this old antique closet we got from our relatives like a decade ago that was portable, with a small door where you can open and hang your clothes like a normal closet with drawers on the right side. We still have it. The closet is about 6 to 8 feet tall and gives out creepy vibes, but you forget that it's there half the time. Moving on to my strange encounter. I'd say it was a fall night and could have been around 12 to 3 a.m. in the morning. Me and my little brother shared a bed and slept on opposite ends. Obviously, people might wake up half asleep with their eyes open for a bleak moment when they hear a noise or just feel something, so as followed I was sleeping one night and could feel and hear something. My door creaked open, and what I saw next got weird. I couldn't move, but I knew I was awake. While I had one eye open and felt tried as hell, I saw 5 to 7 shadowy figures enter my room. I couldn't make much out of their facial looks, but I could see their clothes in good details. These humanoid figures were dressed all in black with odd clothing, that of some old English poetic cloying. Some of these figures were from 3 to 7 feet tall and were all wearing what seemed to me pointy hats, and were all lined up and entering the closed door one by one in single file as if it was some kind of doorway to another place. As soon as they were gone, I immediately went back to sleep. Since that day, I never really gave it much thought, but it felt as real as remembering anything small, like a birthday or a field trip. Anyone else ever had such an encounter? I'm in my second year of law school, and this story happened about a year and a half ago, during exam revision time in December. I was sharing an apartment with a good friend. We didn't study the same thing, but we went to the same university. This friend loved going out, and that night she suggested we go to a nightclub. I refused, wanting to get some rest so I'd be sharp for my exams. She called her boyfriend instead, and they both left around 11 p.m. I studied until midnight. Then, as I was dozing off, I got a call from her. She told me she had forgotten her keys on the coffee table in the living room. I went to check, and yes, they were there. I called her an idiot. She laughed and apologized. She asked if I could stay up until she came back around 4 a.m., but it was only 12:30 and I knew I'd never stay awake that long, nor wake up to answer her call. So we found a solution. Next to our front door there was a small window. From the inside, there was a narrow ledge just beneath it. If I left the window slightly open, she could push it open from outside and grab her keys from the ledge. We decided to do that. I went back upstairs to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to noises downstairs. Cupboards slamming, heavy footsteps, voices whispering, things falling. I immediately thought it was my friend and her boyfriend, drunk and trying to make food. That would explain the noise. The man's voice even sounded like her boyfriend's, though I couldn't be sure because it was so faint. So I put on my robe and stood at the top of the stairs. I listened carefully, then finally called out, "Sarah!" Fake name. "Is that you?" Silence. No more noise. Total stillness. Then, a few seconds later, the front door slammed. A car engine roared to life, followed by the sound of tires screeching on the road. Instantly, I knew what had just happened. Without thinking, I ran back to my room, grabbed my phone, rushed downstairs, locked the front door, took a kitchen knife, and called the police. I explained everything, and they arrived about 10 minutes later. In the meantime, I checked if anything had been stolen. My iPad and my friends were gone, but nothing else seemed missing. Only the cupboards wide open. The police questioned me and told me they couldn't do much else, but they'd patrol the area for a few days. They warned me never to leave doors or windows open at night. It wasn't a safe neighborhood. I called my friend again, but she didn't answer. She got home at 6 a.m. 3 hours later. I had stayed locked inside, sitting in front of the door, knife in hand. When I told her what happened, she was shocked, and we ended up sleeping in the same bed. I couldn't sleep alone. A few days later, we learned that in the neighboring village, someone had been robbed and stabbed for trying to stop the burglars. To this day, I don't know if it was the same people. By the way, the keys were never found. We assumed they took them. The police advised us to change the locks. The next day, we contacted the landlord, and the lock was replaced that same day. The prison system. Not quite the place I ever imagined myself working. Some of the prisons within the state are over 30 years old, and those are the new ones. Several of the older ones are over a century old. These places have seen their fair share of violence and bloodshed. Men come in and become predators. Even more become prey. It's in places like these where one can truly see what a man can do to another man. Many leave reformed, but many more leave having learned how to be a better criminal. No air conditioning in the summer within the cell blocks, combined with the tempers of men who believe they're the toughest on the yard. It's the perfect recipe for violence. Many have come into the system and never made it out, whether because of their sentence, another inmate, or their own hand. But sometimes something stays behind. Sometimes that something is malevolent and it makes itself known, and sometimes there are things outside the walls, lurking in the woods or the empty land beyond, that make even the worst inmate look tame. That's where my story begins. These places of concrete and iron hold the most dangerous criminals known to man. But outside those walls, there are things much, much worse. For safety reasons, I won't mention my name or the facility where I work, but this is my story, an encounter that still haunts my mind and keeps me uneasy on foggy nights. One of the most important daily duties is the perimeter inspection. It's often a peaceful break from the chaos inside. Most prisons have two fences, an inner and an outer perimeter. Inspections are done every shift to ensure the locks are secure and the fence hasn't been tampered with. I was new to the shift, only a few weeks in after training, and I was eager to do it properly. It was 2100 hours. The sun had long set, and a full moon lit the sky. A thick but patchy fog had rolled in from the woods to the west. Soon I was deep within it, my only comfort being my flashlight, my pepper spray, and my radio. Behind one of the buildings, as I checked the emergency doors, I heard what sounded like thunder, but when I looked up, the sky was clear. The sound was coming from the left, across the field. That's where the prison horses were kept, used for search patrols in case of escape. The horses were running full speed across the pasture, then suddenly huddled together, neighing in panic. Something had spooked them, though I couldn't see what. I called the mobile patrol officer on the radio and asked him to come by with his spotlight. He arrived, scanned the pasture, and noticed something lying in the far corner among the tall grass. He said he'd check it out, told me to continue the inspection, and drove off. I obeyed, but unease was already creeping up my spine. Minutes later, I heard him on the radio asking the nearest guard tower to shine its spotlight over the same area. The tower light switched on, sweeping across the pasture. Then the shift lieutenant came over the radio asking if help was needed. The mobile officer asked to meet at the front of the facility. I tried convincing myself it was a simple contraband drop. Maybe someone had left drugs or a phone out there and spooked the horses. That explanation made sense, at least it helped me stay calm. But the truth was nothing close to that. As I continued walking, nearing the tower, I suddenly heard something hit the fence behind me. Hard. I turned left. The chain link was shaking violently like someone was climbing it. Then it stopped. A second later, I heard a heavy thud on the ground and saw a massive shadow rise through the fog. Then dart to the left and disappear. My heart stopped. I backed away, eyes locked on the spot, and radioed for the tower to aim the spotlight at my position. The lieutenant came on the radio, asked what was happening. I told him someone had entered the perimeter. He asked if I was sure. I said yes. He sent back up. The tower light swept over the fog as I searched the darker corners with my flashlight, hand shaking around the can of pepper spray. Then I saw it. The razor wire on top of the fence had been bent downward, blood glistening on the edges. Tufts of hair clung to the metal. Whatever it was, it had bled climbing over. I turned toward an area I'd already inspected earlier when I heard deep, heavy breathing in the dark ahead. There was something. A large dark shape uncrouched low to the ground. Before I could aim my flashlight, it began to rise. What I saw next froze me where I stood. The thing stood upright, nearly 8 feet tall. Long arms ending in clawed hands. A hunched back covered in thick fur. Pointed ears flattening against its skull. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, animal yet intelligent. I couldn't lift my flashlight. I didn't want to see its face. I didn't want to see it. Then it moved. Fast. It swiped at me with one of its massive, almost human hands. I fell backward, breath knocked out of me, scrambling to retreat. Before it could reach me again, 2 gunshots echoed through the night. The creature turned its head, revealing a long snout lined with teeth. Another shot. It leaped over me, scaled the fence effortlessly, and vanished into the darkness. The guard tower officer was still aiming his rifle toward the pasture. Backup arrived moments later. The fear that had paralyzed me began to fade, replaced by exhaustion. I passed out soon after. When I woke, paramedics were treating deep claw marks across my chest. I told them it was a large animal, maybe a bear. That's what the report said too, but those scars didn't look like a bear's. The spacing, the shape, too human. Later, I learned the patrol officer had found a dead horse, its throat torn open, teeth marks everywhere. The official story said black bear. I nodded and kept quiet, but I know what I saw, and it wasn't a bear. Before his retirement, the tower officer, the one who saved me, told me something I'll never forget. We stay inside the facility at night when we can. The old hands know why. The new ones like you think it's just a myth, until it happens. Don't go out there in the night, especially when the wolfsbane is in bloom and the autumn moon is full and bright. I was 15 when I first saw the devil. I was 15 years old when I came across the devil. It was a fall night and I had just come out of my hockey practice. The arena lay between two small clusters of trees, small enough that you couldn't really call them forests. But past those, and on the other side of the arena, was the forestry center. This was the place, of course, where all the older kids like to go to make out, smoke weed, spray paint dicks on the side of the utility building. Not that I knew of any of that. By 15, I was a social outcast, barely able to make friends due to being too much. I'd later go on to learn that I was simply neurodivergent, and they didn't know how to handle me. So there I am, leaving practice, walking through the first cluster of trees to the second, ready to cut through the forestry center to make the hour-long walk home feel a little less monotonous. The trees were scary, but at least they were something new to look at. My walk home usually consisted of a few shoddy businesses and a fire and police station. With the forestry center, you could at least be slightly entertained by the local wildlife. Once I leave the first cluster of trees, the sun finally setting, the golden yellow light, that ever-elusive golden hour ending, the eerie darkness that wasn't quite darkness creeping in. This was darkness where you could see in front of you, but just barely, the trees blocking any slight chance to be illuminated by the moonlight. I'm walking, and I hear some twigs snapping in the distance. At this point, I've reached the second cluster of trees, and I'm about to hit the forest proper. I don't really react. The biggest animal in these woods is a deer, and I might be socially awkward and small. My growth spurt won't come till next year at the earliest, but I'm not a baby. I know that no big bad wolf is gonna get me, unless the prospect of chipmunks slowly nibbling you to death is particularly terrifying. As I'm entering the forest, I begin to hear more snapping, but deliberate this time, as if something is trying to draw my attention into its direction. I'm ignoring it at first, shrugging it off as a nice buck that maybe one day my stepdad will shoot with his compound bow. That's when I hear the first growl. It's inhuman and savage, like a hole being torn in a burlap sack. Panic floods my body, turning my spit dry in my mouth and making my pubescent armpits go crazy with perspiration. Fuck this shit, I say as I'm turning to leave the forest. Maybe the highway pathway home isn't too bad. Hell, maybe someone's here and they can drive me home. I laugh to myself, I think in part to hear something other than the uncomfortable silence of the forest. It doesn't work. Fear tightens my stomach into a fierce knot as I try to just keep walking. How fucking far had I gotten into the woods without noticing? I heard another branch break, not a twig but a full-on branch. I broke at that moment, my paralysis being overtaken by pure and total terror. I sprinted toward the opening in the foliage, branches whipped at my face, my arms scratching small shallow cuts, unnoticed. All that mattered was getting out of this labyrinth of fear that I had created for myself. As I scanned the right and left, my eye fell upon my first glimpse of whatever it was. At first I thought he was my stepdad, but his features were wrong and he crouched low to the ground, not in a normal human way. He crouched as if to pounce. "Hey Joe, come here. Your mom sent me to pick you up." The voice sounded like his voice, but something was off about it, as if it was coming through an echo. His eyes glowed. I remember that. They glowed in the early evening light like a cat's eye. I froze in place, unable to move, and forced myself to squint toward the crouch thing. Before I could comprehend what was happening, the creature sprang forward, sliding behind the closest tree to me. I saw the fingers of the thing scrape the tree as I broke for the tree line, hearing the impossibly fast movement of the thing. My stomach lurched as I forced my legs to carry me faster than I ever had before. That's when he caught up to me, grabbing me by the shirt and slammed me into the soft earth, my breath coming out in a whoosh. "Why are you running away from me, buddy?" "You've got no reason to be scared," said the thing, taking the form of my stepdad. His breath was rancid. It smelled like rotting food and stinking dampness, like the dump in the summer. I tried to hide my fear, but it was evident on my face. "I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to run away." You just spooked me is all, I replied, nervously laughing. I could feel the thing's claws digging into my shoulders, holding me down. Can you let me up, Mike? I said, staring it in the eyes. There was nothing human in them. The thing looked at me coldly. Of course, Joe, no problem. You can do whatever you would like. I'm not going to stop you. The thing answered in a voice that was somehow too wavering, almost high-pitched but in an animalistic way. It was also drooling, not a lot, but enough that a few drops landed on my white t-shirt. I could feel the grip loosen on me, and as soon as I did, I squirmed out from underneath its hand, breaking into a full run before my legs knew they were moving. I could hear the thing let out a growl that could only be described as prehistoric, a screech that echoed through the rows of trees. I could see the clearing in the trees. I even saw cars moving through the parking lot. My nerves eased as I broke through the trees. I didn't dare turn around, I just sprinted through the double doors of the forestry center shed. I startled a forestry employee who spilled his coffee and shouted, "Hey, what the fuck, kid? I'm sorry, I just thought I saw something in the woods and I had to get to somewhere safe." I can just wait for my ride. They're supposed to be here any second. I laughed nervously, my sweaty, drool-covered shirt stinking of the fear I had just exuded. Okay, do you need me to call anyone? Need a drink? Anything? You're looking pretty pale, bud. You should sit down. You're Mikey's stepson, yeah? He said, handing me a bottle of water from a mini fridge that was sitting beside his desk. A tap on the window made me and this Forest Center employee. I think I remember that his name was Jack? Maybe Jeff. I met him once when I was younger. Both jump and look wide-eyed at the thing pretending to be my stepdad grinning at the glass. "Oh, good. Your stepdad's here to pick you." "Oh," he began, before I cut him off. "That's not my stepdad. It's wearing his skin, but it's not him," I managed to say, barely above a whisper. "What did you say?" Jack asked, his hand reaching toward his walkie-talkie. He clicked the button and spoke into the receiver on his shoulder. "Hey, Bob, you notice anything weird about the forest today?" he asked, smiling back at the thing standing glaring through the plexiglass at me. "Please, just listen to me." "I know it looks like him, but it's not him. You have to believe me," I started, but was cut off by the walkie's response. "Hey, Jack, yeah, I was gonna let you know. We found a bunch of dead animals, deer by the looks of them. Hard to tell. Their skin was peeled off. Nothing was eaten, though. They're just skinned. We've been dealing with this shit show to think of even telling you. What do you think, hunters?" "What kind of hunter skins their prey without taking any of the meat?" Jack responded, slowly looking up to see the creature at the door reaching for the handle of the small shed. It stopped suddenly, and in the same not-so-right voice said, "Come on, Jack, let me in." I'm just trying to get Joe home safe to his mom. Did I see a flash of anger in those reflective, animal-like eyes? I think I did. "Just open the door and get him yourself, Mike." "Nothing's stopping you." "Just out of curiosity. What's your wife's name, Mike?" Jack replied, pulling his drawer open. I saw a buck knife lying in its sheath. Jack reached for it and the creature's eyes locked on his hands, tracking every bit of him reaching for the knife. "Come on, Jack, you've known me for over 20 years. It's me, just open up, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your forestry shed down. Ha ha ha, her name is Mary. Of course." The creature laughed, or at least its version of a laugh. It sounded like marbles being rolled along a concrete floor. "My mom's name is not Mary. This was not my stepdad. When I make my move, you fucking run. You hear me?" Jack muttered, not letting his lips move too much to give away his plan to the thing standing outside. The creature's eyes were not in the slightest filled with joy at this point. A look of malice and hate darkened every bit of its expression as Jack unsheathed the knife and yanked the door open, knocking the creature momentarily off balance. It dug its back hooves into the dirt to remain on its feet after being knocked out of its spot. That's what it had. Not feet, but hooves, jammed into my stepdad's old New Balance running shoes. The hooves had ripped holes in the heel of the shoes while trying to chase me, it seemed. I saw all of this as if in slow motion as I ducked beneath Jack's arms and broke into a full sprint. I got to the highway eventually and flagged down a car. I heard a scuffle behind me and Jack screaming, but I couldn't risk a look back. When I finally did, I saw two reflective eyes disappearing from the edge of the woods as I drove off into the night. The nice lady who picked me up used to go to church with my mom. She knew where I lived, and as we pulled up to my driveway, my stomach dropped as my stepdad stood in the driveway, hands crossed over his chest. His eyes were reflecting the fading light, shining. My mother was staring out the window. Her eyes were reflective as well. Well, here we are. Home sweet home. I have been going to a lot of strange celebrations and bizarre parties lately. These are the kinds of parties where everyone wears masks, but I don't. I never liked having my face covered, and honestly, I don't even know why I keep getting invited to them. Still, every time someone takes a photo, I notice the same unsettling thing. The person standing behind me, always wearing a mask, is dressed in my exact clothes. It's strange, unnerving even. I never know how to react when it happens. I just want one photo, one single picture, where I'm the only one wearing my clothes and not some masked figure behind me. At another party, people wouldn't stop staring at me. I'm not used to that kind of attention, and everything felt off. The masks they wore looked half animal, half demonic, twisted, grotesque faces frozen in fake smiles. When they said it was time for a group photo, I already knew what was coming. And of course, there it was again. That same masked person behind me, wearing the exact same outfit. My outfit. I felt sick, angry, like I didn't even belong there anymore. As more of these parties happened, the pattern didn't stop. Every time, the same thing. The person behind me, dressed like me. I started to get furious. Once, after seeing another photo, I snapped. I turned around and started shouting at the guy behind me, accusing him of copying me, mocking me. But instead of fear, everyone just laughed. They were delighted by my rage, feeding on it. I yelled louder, desperate for someone to take me seriously, but they only laughed harder. Eventually, I gave up fighting. I clenched my teeth and tried to accept it, but the anger kept boiling inside. Why was I even invited to these parties? I'd never been popular, never even noticed, but now everyone seemed obsessed with me. Every flash of a camera showed that same masked figure behind me, dressed exactly like me. One night I completely lost it. I turned and punched the person behind me. He laughed, then he punched back, but I didn't feel anything, nothing at all. The crowd around us erupted in laughter. And then I understood. I looked down. I had no head, yet I was still standing, still moving. I realized I had always been wearing my clothes in those pictures. It only looked like the person behind me was dressed like me, because the one behind me wasn't behind me at all. He was wearing my head.